Prince Aldrich sat alone behind carved screens in the corner of the grand dining hall. While hundreds of nobles feasted and laughed just 20 feet away, he might as well have been on another planet. His plate grew cold as servants placed it silently before him and disappeared without a word. The luminary people didn't speak the way humans did. They talked through light, glowing patterns that rippled across their crystalline skin in waves of color. A flash of gold meant joy. Deep blue signaled respect. Angry red pulsed when someone felt challenged. Every conversation was a light show, a living painting of emotion and meaning that danced across their bodies. Aldrich had been born blind. He would never see those lights. To his people, this made him broken. Incomplete. An embarrassment to the royal family that no amount of fine clothes or ceremonial titles could fix. So they hid him away during meals, placing ornate screens around his table so the court wouldn't have to look at the defective prince while they ate. He could hear them though. The scrape of chairs, the clink of crystal goblets, the rustle of robes as people moved between tables. Sometimes he caught fragments of spoken words. The luminary could speak aloud, they just rarely did. Light was faster, more nuanced, more beautiful. Speaking with voices was considered crude, something only children did before their light organs fully developed. Aldrich pressed his fingers against the cool surface of his untouched plate. Somewhere beyond the screens, his brother was probably flashing orange dominance patterns at the military commanders. His sister would be glowing soft pink as she charmed the merchant lords. His parents sat at the high table in brilliant white radiance, the mark of imperial authority. And he sat in darkness, always in darkness, understanding nothing. A servant approached. Aldrich could tell by the footsteps, quick, efficient, the sound of someone who wanted to complete their task and leave as fast as possible. No one liked serving the blind prince. It made them uncomfortable. But then something unexpected happened. The servant spoke. "Hey there, Prince Aldrich? I'm Ben. Got your dinner here." Aldrich's head snapped up so fast his neck cracked. The voice was young, male, and spoke with an accent he didn't recognize. You're speaking. Out loud. Yeah? There was a pause. Is that wrong? Man, I'm sorry, I'm new here. First day actually. This place is absolutely incredible though. It's like someone built a palace inside a giant diamond. Everything sparkles. Aldrich felt something strange twist in his chest. When was the last time someone had described something to him? Told him what they saw? You're not luminary. Nope. Human. From Earth. We just joined the Galactic Council thing, so they're doing this cultural exchange program with servants. I got assigned to the palace. The voice came closer. They said I'd be working with you specifically. That cool? No one had asked Aldrich if something was cool in approximately 7 years. They gave you this assignment because no one else wants it, Aldrich said quietly. The bitterness leaked into his voice before he could stop it. I'm the job nobody wants. The prince who can't see light, so he can't really be luminary at all. Silence stretched between them. Aldrich waited for the awkward apology, the uncomfortable retreat, the usual response when someone realized just how broken he was. Instead, Ben said something that changed everything. Well, that's just stupid. Aldrich blinked. What? It's stupid. You can't see their light talk thing, so what? I can't do it either, humans don't have those glowy patches. Does that make me defective? Ben's chair scraped as he sat down uninvited. My grandma lost her sight when she was 40. Diabetes. You know what she said? She said people who thought that made her less of a person could go jump in a lake. She learned to navigate by sound, got these cool devices that read text out loud, kept doing her job as a music teacher for another 20 years. Best music teacher in the county, actually, because she taught people to really listen instead of just reading sheet music. Aldrich sat frozen. No one talked to him like this. No one sat with him. No one ever suggested that maybe, possibly, the problem wasn't him. So yeah, Ben continued, and Aldrich could hear the smile in his voice. The way I see it, if your whole society decided that talking with light was the only way to communicate, and then they just gave up on you instead of figuring out alternatives? That's on them, not you. For the first time in months, maybe years, Prince Aldrich laughed. It came out rough and surprised, like he'd forgotten how. But it was real. What's so funny? Ben asked. You just called my entire civilization stupid. To a prince. On your first day. Oh. A pause. Am I about to get fired? I'm probably about to get fired. No. Aldrich shook his head, still smiling. No, you're absolutely not fired. In fact, I think you might be the first person in this palace who's actually told me the truth about anything. Ben let out a relieved breath. Cool. So, you gonna eat? This food looks amazing but I have zero idea what it is. Is that thing glowing? Can you eat glowing food? Is it safe? Aldrich found himself explaining Luminary cuisine to someone who asked real questions and made jokes and treated him like a normal person instead of a tragic figure to be pitied or ignored. Beyond the screens, the court continued their silent light conversations, utterly unaware that something had shifted. The lonely prince had found a friend. And neither of them realized yet just how much that friendship was about to change the entire empire. Ben started showing up to every meal, and not just to drop off food and disappear like the other servants. He actually stayed. He pulled up a chair, described what he was seeing, and turned the silent alien light show happening around them into something Aldrich could finally understand. Okay, so your brother just walked past, Ben said one evening, keeping his voice low. And I swear his whole body just lit up like a traffic light. Bright orange and red, moving in these wave patterns from his head down to his feet. All the guards straightened up when they saw it. Aldrich leaned forward, interested. What kind of waves? Fast or slow? Horizontal or vertical? Vertical. Like stripes going up and down his body. Pretty aggressive looking, honestly. Royal command pattern. Vertical means his asserting authority, making sure everyone remembers he's in charge. Aldrich's jaw tightened. He always does that when he walks near my screens. He knows I can't see it, can't respond. It's his way of reminding everyone that I'm powerless. Ben felt anger bubble up in his chest. Back on Earth, he'd seen bullies. He'd dealt with his share of jerks who picked on people they thought were weaker. But this was something else. This was a whole society that had decided one person didn't matter, and they'd all just gone along with it. That's really messed up, Ben said. It's just how things are. Doesn't mean it's right. Over the next few weeks, they developed a rhythm. Ben became Aldrich's eyes, quietly narrating the conversations happening in flashes and colors all around them. The prince taught him what each pattern meant, the subtle difference between respectful blue and submissive blue, how pink could mean either affection or manipulation depending on the pulse speed, why green was complicated because it signified both honesty and envy based on intensity. In return, Ben told Aldrich about human culture. About music and how it could make you feel things without any light at all. About his grandmother who taught him that disability wasn't a weakness, just a different way of experiencing the world. About technology humans had developed, devices that let blind people read through touch, navigate through sound, experience art through texture and temperature. Wait, humans have technology specifically designed for blind people? Aldrich asked one day, amazed. Yeah, tons of it. Echolocation devices that work like sonar, sending out sounds and measuring how they bounce back to create a mental map. Tactile displays that turn visual information into patterns you can feel with your fingers. Audio descriptions for movies and art. Screen readers for computers. My aunt is blind and she's a software engineer, one of the best in her field. Aldrich sat back, processing this. Your people accommodate blindness. You build your society to include those who can't see. Well, yeah. Why wouldn't we? Because here, light is everything. We worship it, celebrate it, make it the center of our entire culture. If you can't participate in that, you're considered. He trailed off. Broken? Ben supplied gently. Incomplete. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Ben had an idea. What if you're not incomplete? What if you're just using different senses? I bet there's stuff you notice that all these light-obsessed people miss completely. He started teaching Aldrich to pay attention to things the Luminary ignored. The subtle sounds of footsteps that revealed whether someone was confident or nervous. The way air currents shifted when people moved. How different materials absorbed or reflected sound. The scents that clung to people and revealed where they'd been. The mineral smell of the treasury vaults, the sweet perfume of the gardens, the metallic tang of the army. Aldrich discovered he could identify people by their breathing patterns, their walking rhythms, even the rustle of their specific clothing fabrics. He started noticing conversations the Luminary thought were private because they held them in dim corners, not realizing that shadows didn't matter to someone who lived in perpetual darkness. But not everyone was happy about the changes. Lady Mora, the head courtier, cornered Ben in a hallway one afternoon. Her skin flashed warning red, bright enough that Ben had to squint. You're overstepping, human, she said, her voice cold. Prince Aldrich's situation is delicate. We've arranged things for his comfort and dignity. Your constant presence disrupts the order we've carefully maintained. You mean the order where you stick him behind screens and pretend he doesn't exist? Her red glow intensified. You forget yourself. You are a servant here. A guest from a newly admitted species. You are not his friend, not his equal, and certainly not someone who should be influencing a member of the royal family. Maybe he needs someone who actually treats him like a person instead of a problem to be hidden away. The prince's isolation protects him from embarrassment. Without it, he would be constantly reminded of what he lacks, what he can never be. We spare him that pain. Ben shook his head. You're not protecting him. You're protecting yourselves from having to acknowledge him. There's a difference. Lady Mora's skin went icy white, the color of imperial displeasure. Remember your place, human. You are replaceable. She swept away in a shimmer of hostile light, leaving Ben standing alone in the corridor, his heart pounding. That night, he told Aldrich about the confrontation. The prince wasn't surprised. She's been my keeper since I was young. She truly believes she's doing what's best. Aldrich sighed. And perhaps she's right. Perhaps I should stop pretending I can be part of this world. Don't say that. Ben, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but reality is reality. In 2 weeks, my mother is hosting the ceremonial hunt. All royal children must attend and participate. It's a test of worthiness, tracking prey through the light forests where everything glows and communicates through bioluminescence. I cannot possibly. What if you could? Aldrich laughed bitterly. How? What if you had eyes? My eyes. I could describe everything, guide you through it. Servants don't attend the royal hunt. Then I'll sneak into a supply cart or something. I don't care. Ben grabbed his friend's shoulder. Look, all these people have spent your whole life telling you what you can't do. Maybe it's time to show them what you can do. With a little help. Aldrich sat very still. 4 years, he'd accepted his limitations, stayed small, tried not to cause problems. But something had changed since Ben arrived. Some small flame of defiance had sparked to life. If we're caught, you could be expelled from the planet. I could be formally declared unfit for any royal duties. Or, Ben said, grinning, you could succeed and blow everyone's minds. Prince Aldrich took a deep breath. Then, for the first time in his life, he chose to fight back against the darkness everyone else had decided should define him. Let's do it. The royal caravan traveled for 2 days to reach the luminous forests, and Ben spent most of that time hiding in a supply cart under piles of spare linens. His back ached, his legs cramped, and he'd eaten nothing but the dried fruit he'd smuggled in his pockets. But when they finally arrived and he peeked through the canvas covering, what he saw made every uncomfortable moment worth it. The forest glowed. Not like electric lights back on Earth, but with this organic, living radiance. Trees with crystalline bark pulsed in slow rhythms of blue and green. Flowers bloomed in bursts of pink and gold. Even the moss on the ground sparkled with tiny points of white light. It was the most beautiful thing Ben had ever seen, and the most impossible place for a blind person to navigate. He snuck out after dark and found Aldrich's tent. The prince was sitting alone, and even though Aldrich couldn't see, Ben could tell he was scared. I don't know if I can do this, Aldrich admitted quietly. Yes you can. We've been practicing. Practicing in the palace gardens is different from hunting in a forest where everything communicates through light. The prey we're supposed to track, they're called shimmerwings. They leave glowing trails through the air that fade after a few seconds. How am I supposed to follow something I can't see? Ben pulled out a small earpiece he'd been working on for weeks. Human tech. I'll describe everything you need to know. The trails, the obstacles, where to step. It'll be like having eyes. They tested it that night, walking through the edges of the camp. Ben describing terrain, Aldrich learning to trust the voice in his ear completely. It wasn't perfect, but it might work. Except the next morning, when Aldrich put the earpiece in and Ben tested it from his hiding spot in the supply area, all he got was static. Then nothing. The device was dead. Ben's hands shook as he examined it. Someone had damaged the power cell. Not accidentally, this was deliberate sabotage. And he had a pretty good idea who was behind it. The night before, he'd overheard 2 courtiers talking near the supply carts. They'd been speaking aloud because they thought no servants were nearby, and they definitely didn't think a human could understand the significance of what they were saying. The Prime Minister wants this resolved tomorrow. When the prince fails publicly, we can finally petition to have him removed from the line of succession. He's been an embarrassment long enough. About time. A blind luminary leading our people? It's unnatural. Ben had been furious then. Now he was terrified. Aldrich was about to walk into a trap, and Ben had no way to help him. The hunting party assembled at dawn. Aldrich's siblings gleamed in the early light, their skin patterns showing excitement and confidence. The Empress gave a formal speech that Ben couldn't hear from his position, then released a shimmerwing. The creature took off in a burst of rainbow light, leaving a glowing trail through the air. The royal children launched after it, moving with practiced grace through the luminous forest. Aldrich stood at the starting point, isolated and uncertain. Without Ben's voice in his ear, he was lost. Ben watched from behind a supply tent, his mind racing. Then he made a decision that would either save his friend or get them both expelled from the planet. He ran. "Ben Hayes, you are forbidden from," a guard started to shout, but Ben was already crashing into the forest, dodging between glowing trees. "Aldrich," he yelled at the top of his lungs. "Follow my voice." The prince's head turned sharply toward the sound. Ben kept shouting, guiding him away from ravines and low branches, around patches of unstable ground that glowed treacherously bright. "This is cheating," someone protested from somewhere in the forest. But the Empress, watching from a viewing platform, held up her hand. Her skin patterns had gone thoughtful silver. "Let it continue." Ben found Aldrich in a small clearing, both of them breathing hard. The prince looked frustrated and lost. "The earpiece. Someone sabotaged it. But forget that. We're going to hunt the old-fashioned way. The human way." "I don't understand." Ben knelt beside him, speaking urgently. "Your people hunt with their eyes, following light trails. But humans? We track prey through signs they can't help but leave. Broken twigs. Disturbed ground. Scents on the air. Sound. I can't track something I've never seen." "You don't need to see it. Listen. What do you hear?" Aldrich went still, really listening for the first time. The forest was full of sounds the luminary never paid attention to because they were too focused on visual information. The flutter of shimmerwing wings created a distinct high-pitched hum. The creature's feet, when it landed on branches, made tiny clicking sounds on crystalline bark. "I hear something moving. Northwest. The rhythm is fast, then pausing, then fast again. That's hunting behavior. It's catching smaller insects." Ben grinned. "Now feel the ground. Shimmerwings are heavier than they look. When they land on lower branches, you can feel the vibration through the roots of these trees. They track together." Ben described the visual environment, clearings ahead, dense patches to avoid. Aldrich provided the sensory information Ben's human ears weren't trained to catch, the specific sound pattern that meant the creature was about to change direction, the way air currents shifted when something moved through the bioluminescent flowers. "It's close," Aldrich whispered. 20 feet ahead. Low branch. I can hear its breathing." Ben carefully took Aldrich's bow from his back and placed it in his hands. "There's a clear shot line. No obstacles. The branch is at your 10 o'clock, about chest height. The creature is on the right side of the branch." Aldrich knocked an arrow by touch, something he'd practiced thousands of times in private. He drew the string back, his blind eyes staring at nothing, his entire body focused on the subtle sounds only he could hear. He released. The arrow flew true. There was a flutter, a thump, and then silence. Ben let out a whoop of victory. "You got it. Dead center." The other royal children emerged from the forest, their skin patterns showing shock and confusion. Aldrich's brother flashed angry crimson. His sister pulsed with uncertain yellow. The Prime Minister, who'd been following the hunt from a distance, looked like he wanted to melt into the glowing moss. Aldrich walked forward, and Ben quietly guided him to where the shimmerwing lay. The prince knelt and picked up his prey, holding it high. The Empress descended from her viewing platform, her skin patterns unreadable. The entire hunting party fell silent. She walked right up to her son. For a long moment, she just looked at him, really looked at him, maybe for the first time in years. Then her skin flashed brilliant gold. Pure, radiant pride. "My son," she said aloud, so even the human could understand, "has shown us that there are many ways to hunt. Many ways to perceive. Many ways to succeed." She turned to face the assembled nobles and courtiers. "Perhaps we have been the blind ones all along." The Prime Minister's skin flickered with barely concealed rage, but he was trapped. The prince had succeeded. The trap had failed. And everyone had witnessed it. Ben stood next to his friend, both of them covered in forest dust and breathing hard, and realized something important. They hadn't just won a hunt. They'd won something much bigger. They'd proven that the rules everyone accepted as unchangeable were really just choices. And choices could be changed. After the hunt, everything changed. Aldrich's success had been too public, too undeniable for the court to ignore anymore. The Empress herself ordered that the prince be included in official court sessions, and Ben was given formal permission to attend as his aide. No more hiding behind screens. No more pretending the blind prince didn't exist. But not everyone was happy about it. The first court session was awkward. Nobles kept glancing at Aldrich and Ben with uncertain skin patterns, confused yellows, suspicious oranges, uncomfortable greens. They weren't used to having the prince actually present, actually participating. And they definitely weren't used to a human servant sitting right beside royalty, whispering translations. The Prime Minister stood at the center of the Grand Chamber, presenting the annual budget report. His skin glowed with confident greens and golds as he outlined how resources were being distributed across the empire. Numbers flashed across light displays that only the luminary could read naturally. Everything looked official and proper. Ben leaned close to Aldrich, keeping his voice barely above a whisper. He's showing resource allocations for the outer colonies. Food supplies, medical equipment, construction materials. His whole body is pulsing green. That's honesty, right? Should be, Aldrich murmured back. But wait. Ben squinted at the Prime Minister. His lower torso just flickered yellow for like half a second. And now back to green. That weird. Aldrich went very still. Yellow is deception. If is flashing green confidence but accidentally leaking yellow. He leaned forward, interested now. Read me the exact numbers he's presenting. All of them. Ben did his best, translating the light-based figures into spoken words. Aldrich had an incredible memory, probably developed because he couldn't just glance back at written notes like everyone else. He stored every number, every detail. Over the next few court sessions, they paid special attention whenever the Prime Minister spoke. And they started noticing patterns. Resources allocated to Colony 7 never quite matched the reports from Colony 7 about what they'd actually received. Construction materials sent to the outer settlements seemed to disappear in transit. Medical supplies were listed as delivered, but doctors on those worlds reported constant shortages. He's stealing from them, Aldrich said one night in his chambers. The outer colonies. They're far enough away that no one checks closely. He reports sending supplies, takes the money from the treasury, but only sends a fraction of what he claims. He's been pocketing the difference. That's insane. He's a Prime Minister. He's already wealthy. Wealth isn't always about money. It's about power, influence, the ability to buy loyalty. Aldrich paced the room, his fingers trailing along familiar walls. And he's been getting away with it because no one in this court questions official reports. If something is presented in proper light format by a high-ranking official, it's accepted as truth. But you questioned it. Because I can't see his confident green glow. I can only hear his words, and words can be checked against reality. Aldrich stopped pacing. Ben, we need proof. Real evidence. Testimony from the colonies, shipping records, something that can't be dismissed. They spent weeks investigating quietly. Ben had an advantage the Luminari didn't. He was just a human servant, beneath notice, easy to ignore. He could wander into archives and supply offices that court nobles would never visit personally. He took pictures with his human phone, recorded conversations, collected data that no one thought to hide from someone they considered irrelevant. Aldrich used his own networks, servants who'd been kind to him over the years, lower-ranking officials who felt overlooked by the glittering elite. People who actually cared about the outer colonies because they had family there, friends there, roots that extended beyond the Crystal Palace. The evidence piled up. But they had another problem. Even with proof, who's going to believe us? Ben asked. You're the prince they've dismissed as defective. I'm a human who's been here less than a year. The Prime Minister has decades of credibility. Aldrich smiled, and there was something sharp in that expression. Then we don't accuse him privately. We do it in open court, in front of everyone, where he can't make it disappear. The next full court session, Aldrich requested permission to speak. The Empress looked surprised, her skin flickered with curious silver, but she granted it. Aldrich stood, and Ben stood with him. Every luminary in the chamber turned to look, their skin patterns showing everything from interest to annoyance to condescending amusement. I wish to address financial irregularities in the colonial supply system, Aldrich announced. The Prime Minister's skin flashed with dismissive blue. Prince Aldrich, while your newfound confidence is admirable, Perhaps you should leave complex financial matters to those who can actually read the reports. It was meant to be a killing blow. A reminder that Aldrich was blind, limited, not truly capable of understanding the sophisticated workings of government. But Aldrich didn't flinch. You're correct that I cannot see light displays. Which is precisely why I had my aide translate everything into formats that could be cross-checked and verified. Ben, please present our findings. Ben activated a human-style projector. Aldrich had convinced his mother to allow alternative display methods in court. Numbers appeared on screens, readable by everyone, not just those who could interpret bioluminescent data. Colony 7 reports receiving 40% less food supplies than official records claim were sent, Ben explained, his voice steady even though his hands were shaking. Colony 3 has been requesting medical equipment for 3 years. The Treasury shows those requests were fulfilled. The colony's hospital says they never arrived. Colony 9. This is absurd. The Prime Minister's skin burst into defensive orange. Are you really going to let a blind prince and his pet human question decades of service? I'm going to let evidence speak, the Empress said coldly. Her skin had gone pure white, the color of judgment. Continue. They presented testimony from colonial doctors, engineers, teachers. People who'd suffered while the Prime Minister grew wealthy. Shipping manifests that didn't match Treasury records. Communications that had been suppressed or ignored. The Prime Minister fought back, his skin flashing through every color of anger and denial. He tried to discredit sources, dismiss documentation, argue that mistakes in record-keeping weren't evidence of fraud. But then Aldrich played his final card. You've been very careful to hide your deceptions in light displays, in formats that require luminary vision to fully interpret, the prince said quietly. You assumed that made you safe. But you forgot something important. What's that? The Prime Minister's voice dripped with contempt. I live in darkness. I've learned to notice things that people who rely on sight miss completely. Like the fact that you smell like the mineral dust from the private vaults every time you present these reports. Like the way your breathing changes when you lie, it gets faster, shallower. Like how your footsteps are heavier on the days after you've supposedly sent large shipments, because you've actually spent the morning moving heavy containers of wealth you've stolen. The court went dead silent. Every skin pattern froze. You can fake light, Aldrich continued. You can forge documents. But you can't hide the physical reality of your crimes from someone who experiences the world differently than you do. My blindness isn't a weakness. It's a different kind of sight. And I see you clearly. The Empress rose from her throne. Guards. Arrest him. As guards moved forward and the Prime Minister's skin flashed desperate, pleading colors, Ben felt Aldrich's hand find his shoulder. We did it, the prince whispered. Yeah, Ben whispered back, watching the man who'd tried to destroy his friend being led away. We really did. And in that moment, the entire empire began to understand that maybe, just maybe, they'd been wrong about what it meant to truly see. The trial lasted 3 days, and the whole empire watched. News spread through the colonies, across the capital, into every corner of luminary space. The Prime Minister who'd seemed untouchable was exposed, disgraced, and ultimately exiled to a remote mining facility. But that wasn't the real story that captivated everyone. The real story was the blind prince who'd taken him down. Aldrich became something he'd never been before, visible. Not hidden behind screens or tucked away in forgotten corners, but actually seen by his people. And once they started seeing him, they couldn't stop noticing all the other things they'd been ignoring. The Empress called Aldrich to her private chambers a week after the trial. Ben waited outside, nervous, until Aldrich emerged an hour later with a strange expression on his face. What happened? Ben asked. She apologized. Aldrich's voice was quiet, almost disbelieving. My mother actually apologized. She said she'd failed me, failed all luminari who couldn't perceive light the way most do. She's issuing reforms. The reforms started small but spread quickly. Audio descriptions were added to all government proceedings. Tactile maps appeared in public buildings. The palace hired human consultants to advise on accessibility technology. But more than the physical changes, something shifted in how the luminari thought about themselves. Parents of blind children stopped hiding them away in shame. Schools started teaching alternative communication methods alongside traditional light speech. Someone invented a device that converted light patterns into vibrations that could be felt on the skin, not perfect, but a start. Ben watched it all happen with a mixture of pride and something else he couldn't quite name. Sadness, maybe. Because his time here was running out. The message from Earth came on a cold morning. He'd been accepted to the Diplomatic Academy, one of the most prestigious schools in human space. Full scholarship. A chance to become an actual ambassador instead of just a servant who'd gotten lucky. He found Aldrich in the palace gardens, sitting by a fountain that hummed with a specific frequency the prince found calming. "I got into the academy," Ben said. Aldrich's face lit up with genuine joy. "Ben, that's incredible. You absolutely deserve it." "Yeah. I leave in 3 weeks." The joy flickered, then steadied. 3 weeks. That's good. Enough time to prepare. They sat in silence, listening to the fountain. Ben had known this was coming, had applied to the academy months ago. But somehow he'd managed not to think about what it would mean. Leaving this place. Leaving his friend. "You should go," Aldrich said finally. "You've given me so much, Ben. You helped me find my voice, my strength. But you have your own life to live. Your own future." "I know. It's just, I don't want to leave you alone again." "I won't be alone. Not anymore." Aldrich gestured vaguely at the palace around them. "Things have changed. I have responsibilities now, people who actually want my input on decisions. My mother is including me in genuine governance. I'm not that isolated prince you found behind the screens anymore. You were never that person. Everyone else just couldn't see who you really were." Aldrich smiled. "Because you helped them see. But Ben, you can't stay here forever just to be my translator. That wouldn't be fair to either of us." Ben knew he was right. But it still hurt. The next day, Aldrich requested a formal audience with his mother. Ben wasn't sure what it was about until the Empress summoned him to the throne room. She sat on her crystalline seat, glowing with official white light. Aldrich stood beside her, looking nervous but determined. "Ben Hayes," the Empress said formally. "My son has made a proposal that I am inclined to accept." Ben glanced at Aldrich, confused. "I want you as my official diplomatic aide," Aldrich explained. "Not as a servant. As a partner. An actual position with rank, authority, and responsibilities." "I don't understand. I'm leaving for the academy." "The position would allow you to study at the academy while representing the Luminary Empire," the Empress interrupted. "Specifically, representing the partnership between our people and humanity. You would be the first human granted formal rank in our government. A bridge between our worlds." Ben's mind raced. "You're saying I could go to school and still work with Aldrich?" "You'd be working with me on human-luminary relations," Aldrich clarified. "Helping other worlds understand what we've learned here, that diversity in perception isn't weakness, it's strength. That accommodation and adaptation make everyone stronger." The Empress's skin pulsed with warm gold. "You helped my son see his value. You helped our empire see its blind spots, literally and figuratively. It seems fitting that you continue that work." Ben felt his throat get tight. "I'd be honored." The formal appointment happened a week later. Ben stood in the grand hall wearing actual diplomatic robes, not a servant's uniform but the deep blue of an official envoy. The same hall where he'd first found Aldrich alone behind screens was now filled with luminary and humans, working together, learning from each other. The dining hall had been completely redesigned. No more screens, no more isolated corners. Long tables where people of different species sat together, sharing food and stories. Audio systems provided descriptions of light conversations. Tactile menus let everyone participate. Aldrich sat at one of these tables, Ben beside him, and they were surrounded by others, scientists discussing research, artists collaborating on projects that mixed light and sound and texture, young luminari who were learning that there were many ways to experience beauty. "Remember the first night we met?" Ben asked quietly. "You were alone behind those screens, and I had no idea what I was doing. I remember you called my entire civilization stupid on your first day." "I stand by that assessment." Aldrich laughed. "You know what the best part is? I'm not the only one anymore. There are others like me, coming forward, no longer hiding. Children who'll grow up knowing they're not broken. And it started because one human decided to just talk to me like a normal person." Ben looked around the transformed hall. "I think it started because you were brave enough to hope things could be different." Years passed. Ben graduated from the academy with honors and returned to the Luminary Empire as a full ambassador. Aldrich rose through the government ranks, not despite his blindness but, in some ways, because of it. His different perspective, his ability to notice what others missed, made him an invaluable advisor. They worked on accessibility initiatives across multiple worlds. They trained other diplomats in cross-species understanding. They proved that what one species saw as a disability, another might see as simply a different way of being. The blind luminary children who'd been hidden away grew up to become teachers, engineers, artists, leaders. Technology evolved to support multiple ways of perceiving and communicating. And the Empire, which had once worshipped light above all else, learned to value the insights that came from darkness too. Ben never stopped describing the world to his friend. The play of colors across alien skies, the patterns of light that danced through crystal cities, the visual beauty of a universe that Aldrich would never see. But now those descriptions were part of a conversation, not a one-way translation. Aldrich would respond with what he heard, what he felt, what he understood through senses that most luminari had learned to ignore. One evening, they sat in that same garden where Ben had told Aldrich about the Academy acceptance. The fountain still hummed its calming frequency. "Do you ever regret it?" Aldrich asked. "You could have gone anywhere, worked with any species. Instead you stayed here, working with the Blind Prince." Ben smiled. "You're not the Blind Prince. You're just my friend who happens to be blind. And this?" He gestured at the palace, the empire beyond, the changes they'd helped create. "This is exactly where I wanted to be. Because sometimes the most human thing you can do isn't about superior technology or advanced science. Sometimes it's just about seeing someone who's been invisible, sitting down beside them, and saying, 'I see you. And you matter.'" That simple act of recognition had changed an empire. And it all started because a servant boy decided that leaving someone alone in the darkness was just stupid, and someone needed to do something about it. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.